Hello there, my friend. I'm genuinely happy you've chosen to be here watching this. And if you decide to subscribe, well, that would absolutely make my day. Go ahead, you know you want to. Anyway, let's get started. Steam drifted lazily from the pot on the stove, but inside the dining room, tension hung thick in the air. Aaron Whitaker sat silently at the table, both hands wrapped around a chipped ceramic mug filled with harsh, overbrewed coffee. His eyes followed his wife as she moved through the kitchen with polished ease, her silk blouse gleaming under the lights, her lipstick a bold, theatrical red. She looked like she belonged on a magazine cover, not in their home on a quiet Thursday evening. "All dressed up, for what occasion?" he asked, voice even but edged with quiet scrutiny. Claire didn't pause. She adjusted her top using the refrigerator door as a mirror, then brushed a golden strand of hair behind her ear. "Dinner with some connections running behind schedule," she answered, airy and rehearsed, her tone too perfect to be spontaneous. "If I land this campaign, we could finally move into that Ridgeview place you liked." Aaron leaned his head slightly. "And you're going alone?" That's when she finally faced him. Her gaze was calm, unreadable. "Yes. The client wants a private setting, just a one-on-one conversation. It's how he does business." He didn't press. Instead, he took another sip, letting the silence deepen. Claire let out an impatient sigh and rolled her eyes. "Aaron, this isn't what you're thinking. It's strategic. It's how influence works." She reached across the table, her manicured fingers catching a glint of light, and took his hand. "I'm doing this for us," she murmured, planting a kiss on his cheek. The kind of kiss she used to give before work, back when their love hadn't started to feel so scripted. Now it felt like a transaction. 30 minutes later, Aaron stood by the front window and watched a sleek black sedan roll down their street. She didn't glance back. She didn't see the single tear streaking his cheek. And he didn't see her phone light up with a message from Julian Pierce. Julian, CEO of Cypher Media. Wealthy, influential, known across the marketing world not only for his business acumen, but for the air of power he carried like armor. Claire hadn't disclosed that his offer came with more than a deal. He promised fast-track prestige if she was willing to bend her principles. Just once, maybe twice. What Claire didn't realize was that Aaron had crossed paths with Julian before, 2 years ago in Seattle at a tech conference. Julian had approached him with a tempting role, Vice President of Analytics. Their fiery debate on advertising ethics had ended with Aaron walking away. He had his own vision, a startup called MindVerge, built from nothing but code and grit. Aaron hadn't always been the man in the background. Before Claire's career had taken off, he had been the provider. He spent sleepless nights programming, pitching to investors, breathing life into a dream. But when Claire landed a position at Weldon and Tate, she asked him to ease up. And he did, but easing up turned into fading out. She became the rising star, invited to panels, praised in press. The house became hers. She started saying things like, "Can't you contribute a bit more?" All while Aaron cooked, paid bills, unclogged drains, and quietly maintained code that no one saw. His love for her never vanished, but a little more of himself disappeared each day. Until that night, Claire's big opportunity. High above the city, Julian's penthouse loomed like a modern fortress. Claire stood on the balcony, champagne flute in hand, as the city lights shimmered into a dreamy blur. Her pulse quickened, but she had already stepped too far to retreat. "Take a breath," Julian said, appearing behind her. "You've earned this. You're clever, relentless. You push boundaries." Claire forced a smile. "I just want my name behind the next global campaign." Julian moved closer. "And it will be, after tonight." She stayed. Back at home, Aaron sat on the couch, his laptop glowing in the dim room. He typed Julian Pierce into the search bar and scanned the results, his expression sharpening with each new link. This wasn't just infidelity, it was war, and the old fire that once fueled his startup flickered back to life. He drafted an email, then another and another, Soon he unearthed a long-abandoned manila folder labeled MindVerge. Inside were documents, including the patent for a proprietary algorithm, one Julian's firm had been maneuvering to acquire through a third-party deal. Claire didn't know it, but Aaron still held the crown jewel Julian was quietly chasing. The timing couldn't be better, Aaron muttered as he punched in final figures on a spreadsheet. Let's see how high they rise when I pull the ladder out from under them. Morning arrived, golden light seeping into the kitchen. Claire entered barefoot, heels in hand, phone clutched loosely, sunglasses hiding the fatigue in her eyes. Aaron was already by the stove, flipping eggs with quiet precision. "You're up early," she said, her tone neutral, clipped. "I didn't sleep," he answered without looking her way. A shadow passed across her face, but she brushed it aside. "I closed the deal," she said, easing onto a bar stool. "He handed me the whole campaign. I'm in charge of the East Coast rollout." "Congratulations," Aaron replied, setting her plate on the counter. His gaze didn't rise to meet hers. She stared at him, eyes searching. "That's all? No reaction?" He turned at last, his expression unreadable. "What do you want me to say, Claire? That I'm proud of the cost?" Her breath hitched. "You don't understand. This is how the industry works. Men have been playing this game forever. Sometimes you give something to gain something." "Not if it means losing your dignity," he said quietly. Claire stood, pushing her untouched plate away. "It wasn't betrayal. It was leverage. There's a difference." Aaron remained silent. But his silence wasn't submission anymore. It was calculated. In the weeks that followed, Aaron led two lives. By day, he maintained the facade. Calm, distant, agreeable. By night, he rebuilt MindVerge from the ground up. He reconnected with former collaborators, reawakened old alliances. One of them was Silas Rook, now working with RIVR, an investigative group targeting corporate misuse and abuse. Cypher Media, Julian's empire, was already on their radar for covert data manipulation. Claire had no idea, but Aaron did. One evening, while she left again for another so-called planning session, Aaron uploaded a comprehensive dossier, logs, emails, behavioral modeling, all proving that Julian had stolen and repurposed a stripped-down version of Aaron's AI. It was the final strike. Meanwhile, Claire basked in her newfound fame. She was featured in articles, spoke on industry panels, her social media profile soaring. She described Aaron as the creative recluse who preferred staying behind the curtain. She renovated the house to suit her evolving taste. She even suggested freezing their finances to streamline things. But beneath the surface, something unsettled her. Something she couldn't quite name. Aaron didn't explode. He didn't lash out. Instead, he remained unnervingly calm. Too calm. "Why won't you even try to fight for this?" she asked one evening, swirling the wine in her glass. "What's the use in arguing with someone who's already decided?" he replied, his voice level. The response made her skin crawl. She needed fire. She wanted intensity. But he offered nothing. Just slipped away, quiet as breath. That was the last move Aaron would ever make. 3 months after Claire spent the night with Julian, the news cycle detonated. Federal ethics investigation targets Cypher Media over AI misuse. Julian's mugshot plastered screens everywhere, and Claire's complexion turned ghostly. "What?" she whispered, frozen. Her phone erupted with calls from frantic colleagues, lawyers, and press outlets. By dawn, her political ambitions had crumbled to dust. Her job at Weldon and Tate, temporarily suspended, they said, pending official review. She burst into her apartment to find Aaron methodically packing a suitcase. "You knew, didn't you?" she barked. He zipped it shut, turned slowly to her. "You always claimed this was for both of us, but it was only ever for you." He started toward the door. "You ruined everything," she said under her breath. He stopped. "Number you ruined it. I just showed you the wreckage. Claire's downfall." In the weeks that followed, her world unraveled thread by thread. Weldon and Tate cut ties publicly. Julian faced criminal charges. Her name disappeared from company bios and conference brochures. She called Aaron. No reply, no trace. It was as if he'd been wiped clean from her life. He'd moved on, launched MindVerge, this time solo, backed by a fresh investor aligned with ethical tech. One night, Claire stared into the mirror. Her lipstick smudged, the same shade she wore the night everything unraveled. "I did it for us," she whispered. But the room was empty. Aaron had left no goodbye, just a silence that echoed in every inch of the home she had redesigned to erase him. Now it felt like a mausoleum. His books gone, his tools vanished. Even their Charleston honeymoon photo had disappeared from her nightstand. She never noticed when he took it. Just as she never noticed him fading away, how he quietly absorbed her deception, how he'd fall into silence when she came home wearing luxury cologne and guilt. She thought it was a trade worth making, one night of betrayal in exchange for the life she dreamed about. But the cost? Far higher than she imagined. She didn't see the price tag until it was too late. The quiet loyalty of a good man gone. Time slowed to a crawl. Her once buzzing phone sat dormant, her inbox filled with cancellations, ghosted meetings, and sympathetic rejections. The PR firm let her go. Weldon and Tate issued a dry, impersonal press release, cutting all connection to her and the scandal with Julian. She tried to salvage scraps, called favors, played victim, claimed Julian had coerced her. No one believed it. She rang Aaron again, straight to voicemail. But it wasn't the silence that haunted her. It was the void where emotion should have been. Hatred would have meant she mattered. But this was something worse. It was obliteration. Then, in the quiet of her apartment, lit only by the glow of the refrigerator, she finally opened the USB Aaron had left behind on the coffee table. A simple label, truth. Inside were files, charts, logs, internal communications, a detailed dossier, proof that Julian had stolen Aaron's proprietary code and embedded it in Cypher Media's software without authorization. Claire's hands trembled. Aaron had compiled everything, reported it, and then stepped back, letting her walk into the storm completely unaware. She wasn't collateral. She was complicit. Aaron hadn't screamed. He hadn't begged. He just let her fall and made sure the crash wasn't ignored. Elsewhere, in a city far removed from the chaos, Aaron stood in a glass-paneled conference room, whiteboard scrawled behind him, team gathered around. His sleeves were rolled up, his energy magnetic. To them, he was a visionary. They didn't see the nights he'd spent alone, wondering how the woman he loved had bartered their life for advancement. They didn't see the man who once brought her coffee just to brighten her morning. Yes, he was rising again, but some scars don't fade. Meanwhile, Claire was pawning heirlooms to afford rent, applying for roles she once handed out to others. Her name had become toxic. Her legacy, ash and debris. She relocated to a tiny apartment on the outskirts of town. Bare, unremarkable, silent. Sometimes, while scrolling late at night, she'd spot Aaron in an article, shaking hands, giving keynote speeches, leading new ventures. He looked content. She sent him one final message. "I never thought you'd actually walk away." No reply. But a week later, a letter came in the mail, typed precise. "You didn't lose me, Claire. You gave me away. I just accepted your offer." She read it again and again, until she finally broke down, for the first time in months. Not out of a desire to get him back, but because at last she understood. He'd always been too good for the path she chose. After reading the letter, Claire shut herself in for days. The final line echoed endlessly. "You gave me away." Those words circled her like a ghost, haunting every flashback of the night she stepped into Julian's penthouse. At the time, it had felt like power, like control. Now it felt like ruin. Her network vanished. Her allies fled. The world didn't just abandon her, it erased her entirely. And Aaron? He became the person she once aspired to be. She watched his Forbes interview on a scratched tablet in her lap. Lying in bed, surrounded by unopened boxes, he looked calm, grounded, whole. There was no trace of pain in his voice, just clarity. She switched off the screen and sobbed, not for her collapsed career, but for misjudging the man who once believed she could reach her dreams without sacrificing her integrity. Aaron, for his part, had found rhythm again. He rented a loft by the coast. The mornings were filled with sea breeze and the scent of fresh paint. MindVerge thrived, teaming up with educational platforms, gaining national momentum. But success didn't erase the ache. Some nights he lay awake, remembering fragments of what they once shared. The road trips, the 2 a.m. takeout, the hoodie she never gave back. He missed her. Not the version who traded loyalty for leverage, but the woman who danced barefoot in an empty apartment, laughing like the world was theirs. Still, he chose not to live in the past. Pain, he realized, meant he'd survived it. At a tech gala in San Francisco, he met someone new, Lydia, an art director with her own collection of scars. They sipped whiskey sours and shared their war stories. And for the first time in ages, Aaron laughed, genuinely, effortlessly. In those months, Claire began the slow, halting process of rebuilding. She launched a personal blog, believing that telling the story of her downfall might draw an audience. She portrayed herself not as the villain of the piece, but as someone who had learned the hard way. Yet the internet is rarely kind to those who light the match and then ask for empathy once the fire has burned through everything. Even Julian, once her most trusted confidant, ignored her attempts to reach him. From behind bars, he released a formal statement distancing himself completely. He painted her as a tragic bystander to forces beyond her control. And just like that, Claire found herself utterly alone, isolated in every sense. One evening, a letter appeared at Aaron's new office. No return address, but the handwriting betrayed the sender. Inside was a single handwritten page. Now I see everything for what it was. I don't expect forgiveness. But I want you to know, of everything in my life, you were the one real thing. I didn't know how to hold on to something good. I thought I had to give you up to win. I was wrong. Aaron quietly folded the paper and placed it in the bottom drawer of his desk, choosing not to respond. Some endings are better left untouched. Time moved forward. Aaron's life became more stable, fuller in its own way, though simpler too. He woke before sunrise, buried in a rhythm of early meetings, investor calls, and long coding sessions that felt like a kind of sanctuary. Lydia remained quietly present. She never asked about the past, though Aaron sensed she understood it more than she let on. He appreciated the silence she offered, a silence that didn't demand anything in return. She gave him company without questions. Still, once in a while, during the quiet lull between tasks, Claire's name would flicker across his thoughts like distant thunder. He never reached for it. He let the thought drift past, like a wind pressing against a window that stayed shut. Meanwhile, across town, Claire sat at a dented desk in a shared workspace she could barely pay for. She took on whatever work she could. Freelance copy, ghost-written pitches for tech founders. Her name never appeared on anything. It was a cruel sort of justice, being invisible now after once craving the spotlight so desperately. She avoided mirrors, not out of guilt, but because she no longer recognized the person reflected back. The designer heels and sleek suits were long gone. In their place, worn scarves and eyes heavy with exhaustion. But memory still belonged to her. And it held pieces of Aaron she'd once brushed aside. The way he'd always prepared her tea just right without needing to ask. The way he could fix anything, even her worst moods. She remembered something he'd once told her. "It's not your ambition that scares me. It's what you're willing to lose for it." She had laughed then. Now she understood. On a gray January day, Claire received an email invite to a modest marketing seminar in Portland. It wasn't prestigious, but it was an opportunity. She packed lightly, opted for a bus instead of flying, and rented a small room above a cafe. She rehearsed her talk alone. Her voice, at least, remained intact. That part of her hadn't vanished. The event was smaller than she imagined. Folding chairs, printed badges, no glamour. And then, among the list of featured speakers, a name jumped out. Aaron Whitaker, founder of MindVerge. Her stomach dropped. She hadn't known he would be there. For a split second, she considered leaving. But she stayed. When he took the stage, the room went still. He spoke plainly with calm conviction. There were no fireworks in his speech, but the substance was undeniable, and the crowd leaned in. From the back row, Claire watched, clutching her notepad as if it could hold her steady. When the applause came, people rushed to speak with him. Claire remained in the corner, hidden in plain sight, until Aaron saw her. Their eyes met across the crowd. For a second, neither looked away. It was brief, but the weight of it was unmistakable. Claire broke the gaze first. He didn't approach. He didn't acknowledge her. Instead, he turned to the person beside him, continued his conversation, nodded, and smiled. That night, Claire sat alone in the cafe beneath her rented room. Her coffee had gone cold. She stirred it absent-mindedly, refusing to let the tears fall. The truth settled quietly inside her. This wasn't a redemption arc. There would be no sweeping reconciliation, no cinematic closure, just the weight of what had been lost. The next day, Aaron received a notification in his inbox. An anonymous gift had been made to a scholarship fund he had helped create, one that supported young women entering the tech field. The amount? $5,000. The sender? Anonymous. A brief message was attached. For the girls still climbing, without compromise. He knew who it was, and he smiled, not with joy exactly, but with a deep, settled peace. A chapter had closed. This is where we leave their story. Thank you for reading. If something here moved you, feel free to explore more on our page. Until next time, take care of yourselves.